Yeah, my name is John West. I'm Managing Director of VLSI Research Europe. Okay, well, we see 2009 as being very unsettling. The equipment industry has grown very dramatically over the last 3 or 4 years, and we're seeing a slowdown in the industry, and I think it's taken everyone a little bit by surprise, and a lot of companies have overshot by ramping up their production. So they're finding themselves with a little bit too much production capacity for equipment. And we're seeing now that companies are starting to get worried about the orders that are coming in. So what we're hearing from equipment companies in particular is that they have enough backlog to work through for 2009, but for the second half or for 2010 they have no visibility. I'd say looking for the next 5 years is very difficult to predict a market which is so sensitive to government subsidies. It's very difficult to predict which government will apply which subsidies at any particular time. So we have a forecast, but it's not based on anything other than what we believe to be the status quo with the existing government spending at the same levels or subsidising at the same levels they are now. Well, certainly, we're tracking over 250 equipment companies at the moment, some of them quite large and others less so. We see with the uncertainty in the economic outlook and the lack of orders coming towards the end of this year, we should see quite a few of those smaller companies or less well-resourced companies being shaken out of the market, because clearly there are too many players in there, and for a lot of them there's not a lot of differentiating technology. So we'd certainly expect as orders start to decline throughout 2009 for some of those companies either to be acquired or to exit the market. I think certainly for things like PECVD and PVD, some of the more difficult technologies, I think we're seeing some rather large companies that are playing in there because they have their own technologies. But otherwise, a lot of it is just simple automation or relatively straightforward technology. Well, we can understand why turnkey is so popular right now, because if you want to get into the solar industry, it's an easy and a relatively cost-effective way to actually get in. But then once you're in, then it's perhaps more difficult to become competitive if you're using turnkey equipment, because you're running the same equipment as your competitors are. So from that point of view, we expect as soon as the cell makers, the cell manufacturers, have gone through their own learning curve and they've developed their own processes, it's more likely that they'll actually start going and choosing best-in-class pieces of equipment rather than going to a single supplier for the whole production line. I'd say we may actually be at the peak of the turnkey business at the moment. I think we're already tracking over over 100 companies that are in the industry. We don't see a lot of scope for many new entrants particularly in the next 6 months to a year. So when these fabs or factories start to reinvest, they'll probably start to think a little bit more clearly about, okay, well, what tool set do I need to give me the advantage I need over my competitors? So we think that maybe after maybe 2009, 2010, we expect that to decline. Well, we're seeing a lot of, we are trying to track a lot of different technologies, and there are lots of different cell technologies out there. So we keep a watching eye on each of those as they develop and see whether they may or may not enter the mainstream. But right now we don't see anything on the horizon within the next 2 or 3 years.